So divorce. No matter how you look at it, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for those who are forced to go through it, experience it in their lives. It's a tragedy for the community, too, to see promises sometimes broken. And sometimes quite literally broken by one of the spouses. No matter how you look at it, it harms a lot of people. Some marriages should never have taken place, you know, because of the immaturity of the two people that are involved in it, their inability to actually make any kind of permanent commitment in their lives, and even a personal kind of knowledge of what it means to live with another in the community and to share and to get along. All those sort of things that seem to be the problems of our society today come to roost sometimes in the midst of the hope of marriage, but the personal, emotional inability to carry it out. And so that's why the church has an annulment process, so that people who have gotten in those situations where there's been something key missing are able to receive that declaration from the church that indeed there was never a marriage in the first place. Others break up for other reasons. We can all tell the stories about those. One of those that are harmed the most, it seems, in the whole process are the children themselves. Depending on the age of the children when the divorce takes place, the effect is different. One of the hardest times for a boy to experience divorce is when he starts going through puberty, in that age of 10 to 15. It's the hardest time for him. It marks him forever with a kind of attitude deep down that maybe promises don't mean anything. Children experience this emotional trauma, and unfortunately we see it where children are experiencing it because they become the pawns of their parents who aren't grown up enough to see that it's important for us to get along when it comes to the kids, even though we can't get along anywhere else. So that the kids don't end up becoming the pawns of revenge from one to the other. But even in the midst of the best of the situations, oftentimes the kids experience behavioral problems and academic problems. There's all sorts of studies that tell us what happens, statistically, possibly, for kids. Not every one of them. Some kids are resilient, some kids have the right things that have happened in the midst of the breakup that enables them to navigate these things. But even the statistics tell us that those who go through divorce are 2 times more likely to be high school dropouts. Households without fathers who are present end up possibly with children tending towards crime or substance abuse or sexual promiscuity, much more than those households that have both parents and intact. The Old Testament blessing, may you see your children's children, oftentimes falls upon deaf ears, painful making it for those who've experienced divorce in their lives. For the brokenness that they've experienced in so many relationships sometimes disables them from being able to even see their grandchildren. Now Jesus today in the gospel, we can't mince words. We can't water down his words. His words are there. They're obvious. They're pretty black and white. But he came out with those words because the Pharisees were trying to trap him. They trapped him because they wanted him to speak like John the Baptist. And if he spoke like John the Baptist, then they knew they could get him into trouble with Herod. Because that's where John the Baptist got into trouble, when he started speaking out against Herod's actions, which involved divorce and marrying his brother's wife. And so that action ended up taking off his head. And Jesus is getting trapped into the same thing, but he wasn't going to abandon that message. In fact, when he taught about it, he went back to the very beginning of God's creation. And he says, that's not the way God wanted it. That's not the way God wanted it. When he says, well, what did Moses command you? He didn't should say command us, command you, because of your hard-heartedness, he said. You men, you were treating women like chattel. And so you're just saying, get out of my house, and that's all you need, and she's not free to do anything else. At least Moses said, give her a bill of divorce. Give her something in writing so that she can know and proclaim to someone else, a suitor perhaps, that she indeed is free to marry. Allowing her then to have some kind of income and security in her life. Because in a period of time when women were so downgraded and so much seen as property, Moses at least tried to stick up for them in some way in the midst of that kind of situation. But Jesus goes back further into God's teaching himself, talking about the bond of marriage is not something that human beings create. It is a bond between them, each other, and God. And that's why the bond can't be broken. Marriage leads, according to Jesus and according to the Scriptures, to the two becoming one flesh. And so, divorce by its definition then ends up becoming like cutting a person in two. And who, having gone through divorce, doesn't feel a bit like that? They have been cut in two. When Jesus denied the right to divorce, he basically was putting husbands and wives on the same level. And he says it with that quote at the end of the gospel today, when talking about the guilt is on both sides, depending on who is involved with it. Now, the Catholic Catechism proclaims to us that divorce has a contagious effect. It does have a contagious effect. Because the more and more it becomes possible, the more and more it becomes a common practice, the more and more other people's promises become vitiated a little bit, weakened. Can I make a real promise to someone else in a culture that seems to not take promises so seriously? It doesn't take many years to go backwards in time to see a dramatically different situation when it comes to divorce as opposed to today. And statistics tell us, how in a sense rare it was in the past. What happened with some of that rareness is because people really needed to separate because of the harshness of the situation one of them found themselves in. But the community then marked them so badly that it became a stigma. At least we've learned that, there are situations that we need to be compassionate towards and do the best we can to try to minister to them and help them. Whether it's a counseling or whether it's a program the church offers, like divorce to remarried Catholics. Those sort of things that help people in those situations to navigate that and to go through the mourning process and start to let go of all the scars that take place as a result of divorce. So, the church tries to enter into that and also enter into the fact that today, when it comes to the annulment process, the Vatican has made it much easier for people to go through that process, to the point where any of the financial fees have been dropped completely now. There's no cost whatsoever for someone who's going to apply for an annulment to go through that formal process. So we try to help as best we can, still protecting and following the words of Jesus. So what has gotten us into that situation? What has gotten us into that predicament in our society? That seems to be that so many marriages end up with divorce. What is it that's done that? Some of the things that I reflected on in terms of my reading and knowledge of things and just my own pastoral experience. I guess I have to go back to the years 1940s or so, with the introduction of the first contraceptive methodology. So when the pill was invented, it became a panacea, and it was proclaimed as being the thing that was going to help couples. But what it did was it separated sex from children. To the point where today, actually the common theme is children are a burden. Children cause you to give up your career. Children are something that makes you work really hard, and you can't take care of yourself. You can't have fun anymore. And that's what society is telling us when it comes to having children. That's the message we're getting. So consequently, that separation has had its effect. In in terms of the very purpose of marriage. What is marriage all about? Is it just two people having a contract because they sleep together and have their dogs? I can go to a lot of parks, and that's what I see. Children are not part of the definition anymore in people's minds. They become something I'm going to plan for because I've got other things that are more important. Other things are more important than children. And so what is contraception of it? It's led us down that path. That separation has led us down that path. It is also provided for sexual promiscuity. Men can now victimize women without having any conscience to follow through on it. They don't have to worry about pregnancy. And so women can be used by men. And then that promiscuity keeps going, where we see cohabitation and living together today normal. It's not the exception anymore. It's normal. It's okay. It's really hard to turn that clock back. Things like masturbation and fornication are still considered to be moral sins. And yet we water them down to be just developmental things. So this process, starting with conception, starting with the separation of sex from children, the breakdown of the purpose of marriage, has led us to a society today that makes it easy to say, well, I'll stay married as long as I'm in love. As if love is some sort of tender little feeling that sometimes might go away, and boy, if it does, if we have one argument, that's the other back. It's too easy for some to say, okay, I'm out of this. Where is the work part of making something work for ourselves? Where is the work that two people have to put into it to make a marriage work? Now, here I am celibate talking about marriage, but I talk with experience in the sense of it takes work to maintain a commitment. It took work for me to maintain my priestly commitment to be here today. It didn't come easy all the time. It reminds me of a joke about the husband and wife, because they've been married 70 years, and said, did you ever think about getting a divorce? And the wife says, no, I never thought about divorce. Murder, yes, not divorce. And sometimes that's been true for me too in my own vocation. So, working at it. The next thing that I see on the horizon, not on the horizon, it's in our midst, is the thing that deteriorates the promises of marriage, is the prevalence today and the easy access to pornography. Pornography is the scourge of so many men and women. And it's a fear to me that we don't take it seriously. Some of the surveys tell us that young people today think that wasting water is a bigger sin than pornography. Well, the ecologists have done a good job of selling the message. Kids have learned that. They think that smoking is worse than pornography. So pornography is something that is so prevalent. And so the truth of the matter is that parents, when you give your child their first iPhone or iPad, you're giving them easy access to pornography. It doesn't take much to find it. So if you don't put up those shields or put covenant eyes on that instrument for your kids, then you're opening up that door for them, and you don't know when they open that door. All of the surveys tell us that the first time kids see pornography now is about 3rd grade. And at that age, with their minds, it is truly an emotional damage that's done. They sometimes don't ever recover from that. And this particular thing, pornography, gets into our system, gets us toxic, starts to melt down the respect we have for the sexes, and starts to see sex then as mechanical rather than relational. And it's about as opposite of a pure life and of chastity as you can get. So I paint the picture of the negatives that go against this business about having a healthy marriage. in today's society. So it takes real work today to make it work. Real work. For husbands and wives, boys and girls who are getting married have to really ask those hard questions. What's going on in your life? Is there some secret I don't know about? Because if that secret comes out later on, it will do damage to the relationship. What is it that we can do to counteract some of these things? Well, to be educated about it is the most important thing. And then to make some personal moral decisions on our part. And if we're dealing with issues in our own life that we need to take care of, then we look for the help to do that. There's spiritual help that doesn't really work is prayer. Because this sort of thing, when it comes to, like, for instance, an addiction to pornography, is not something that prayer can alleviate. It's like that phrase that Jesus had with the apostles when they came back and says, why couldn't we cast out that demon? And Jesus says to them, some things can be cast out only with prayer and penance. And so the penance part of it is for us to use the church's penitential practices, especially giving up the pleasures in life, like something like meat, something like TV, something like social media, giving up those things, literally putting them aside for a while so that we can desensitize ourselves from the oversensitization that all of this does to us. There's a lot more that I can say about that, but that's enough for now. So the work, Sister Lucia, who was the last of the seers of the Fatima apparitions, she lived to be 90-some years old. Died about 15 years ago, I think, is when she died. She wrote in her journal that what Mary told her was that the final battle that the devil will launch against the church will be in the area of sexuality and marriage. That's where the devil will do his best emphasis, his best work. And we see the results of it today in our society. The results of it in terms of just the confusion about what's right and wrong in the world. Now Jesus pierces the veil and goes right to the truth and says to us, what did God want for us from the beginning? He wanted a kind of purity in our lives that's an innocence, where Jesus talks about us being childlike. And that kind of innocence is what he promises us when we start to shut off the things that make us to be less than that. Jesus saw the truth, and he wanted us to lead us to it. And he did that by the gift of the Holy Spirit and the sacraments, the prayer and penances that the church offers us, for us to work hard to make that purity possible back in our own lives, husbands and wives and single people. One of the things about naming babies that's really kind of neat, and I think I'd like to say something about it in terms of my comments about the names you give children. You know, a name is something more than just a nice sounding term. A name is supposed to mean something. In other words, many names are translatable and you can find out what it means. Mine, for instance, means well-born. And so when my mom and dad gave me that name, I'm not too sure they thought about that, but I'm the one who did the research on it. And I thought, well, that's not a bad name to have, you know, I'm well-born. In other words, I've got some potential. Well, when I think about this little baby that's going to be baptized after Mass, I think about another connection, the connection to family. To have a name that Grandma and Grandpa had, or somebody in the past, or some important person in your family. So when you name them, you know, you're kind of saying, this is who you are. This is your roots. This is who I want you to be connected to. So it's kind of neat today when Aaron and Dana wanted to schedule their baptism. It just so happens that it's the day we're having Mass for Jeff's stepdad, which is Aaron's dad. And then it dawned on me, over here sitting in the chair, oh my God, they're naming their kid after it. So here's Jeffrey James, and let's welcome him now into our parish. Let's stand now for our